and welcome to the 2021 Mill Valley Film Festival panel, Radical Acts of Filmmaking, Changing the Way Movies Get Made. My name is Lucy Mukerjee, and I'll be moderating today's conversation, focusing on three game-changing films, Rocks, Disclosure, and Scarborough. These films opened up the creative process to embrace innovation and authenticity during the script development, the casting, and the production. So thank you all for being here. I'm excited to be in conversation with you. I just want to give a shout out to my partner in life and in film, Charlie Hidalgo, who conceived this panel and shaped the conversation we're about to have. And now I will introduce our guests. So we have Sam and Nava from the Netflix documentary Disclosure. This film is the first of its kind, a groundbreaking look at the history of trans representation on screen and a manifesto for how the industry should move forward. Thanks for being here, guys. We have Theresa from Rocks, which is a coming-of-age story set in London, centered on a teenage girl who tries her best to raise her little brother when their mum disappears. And Rocks is also streaming on Netflix. Welcome. And Shasha and Catherine from the brand new film Scarborough, which premiered at the Toronto Film Festival just a few weeks ago and blew audiences away with its storytelling approach that blends documentary and narrative styles. Welcome. So all three of these films have in common the themes of resilience, belonging, and community. And your production models prioritize the humanity of your teams, which shouldn't be groundbreaking, but it frankly is. So I'm excited for you to share with folks how you did what you did. Before we dive into the questions, I thought I'd ask everyone to start with a little icebreaker. So if we could share some of the identities, perspectives, and communities that each of us is bringing into the room. And this can be as fun or as serious as you like. I can start. So I'm a queer activist, an older sister, and a lifelong vegetarian. Who wants to go next?
I'm happy to go. I'm a Londoner, I'm Nigerian, and I am the last of 9 children.
I am a New Yorker who now reluctantly lives in Los Angeles, and I'm currently in Athens, Greece. Yeah, I'll leave it there. I'm queer and trans and white.
Hi, I'm Catherine. I am a queer brown femme, cisgender, and my pronouns are she, her. I identify as, my heritage is Filipino, Spanish, Chinese, Indian, and I am married into the Navajo Nation. I'm sadly not a lifetime vegetarian, but I am a lifetime snack eater. So yeah, love snacks. And yeah, nice to meet you all.
Hey, my name's Shasha, and I am a Filipina Iranian who grew up in Nigeria and now is a newcomer to Canada. I guess you would call me a newcomer. I'm also a video game nerd.
Hi, I am a trans Latina woman. I grew up in Mexico City and San Antonio, and I'm a filmmaker and an actress. And I have a very sensitive stomach. So it becomes relevant on set.
Great, thank you all so much for humoring me with that. So I have some questions ready for you all, and just dive in. Whoever feels compelled to answer first, don't wait to be called upon. Just speak when you feel like you have something to share. So my first question is, how did you approach the making of this film to make sure that the communities it's about were being protected, heard, and empowered? And this is for all three films.
For Rocks, we worked with, it's a film about young people in London, predominantly Black and brown young people. What really helped was the communities that we were shooting the film and writing the film about were very much a part of the development process. So we had youth leaders and youth workers throughout the process of casting to shooting, which was really helpful in terms of safeguarding. A lot of what we were doing, a lot of us on the film had a background in youth work or community work in some respects. So we brought a lot of that kind of safeguarding and protection of young people work into the process. But also I think it was fostering, it was 75% female female crew. I've never worked on another set other than that before, so I can't compare, but I have heard from others that there was definitely a safe environment that was fostered and a very nurturing mentorship environment that was fostered. So everybody, I hope many people felt that they could contribute to the process. So there's a Somali character in it, and we went to her house to eat her food and to speak to her family about what was important about how a Somali home looked on screen. So there was that kind of, I hope, give and take and openness and of sharing that I think made Rocks resonate with people in a way that many people felt that they hadn't seen before on screen.
Absolutely, thank you. Sam, can I pass to you? How do you feel the film protected, had, and empowered the communities that Disclosure is about?
I mean, I hope it did those things, and our efforts towards that were, well, one dimension was that behind the camera, we prioritized hiring only trans people for every role on set. And when we couldn't do that, we mentored a trans person. So Nava was actually one of our fellows, our mentees. You were a GRIP fellow, is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So that was, from the beginning, we knew it was essential that it be trans people that were telling the story, like not just the director, right? Everyone that it affected. Like, I think you just can't overstate how important it is that everyone on set is influencing how the story is getting told, right? Like whether it's how they're interacting with the cast in a scripted thing, or interviewees in a documentary, or how someone's being lit, right? There's so many sensitivities and nuance to how a film gets made that all of that is infused in every step of the way. So it wasn't enough just to prioritize hiring trans people, but then when we had a non-trans person in a role, there needed to be a trans person there, and it really became a bi-directional relationship. More so when I remember there was one point when the sound person had to mic someone who was wearing a binder, right? And so our fellow was able to be like, hey, just like take a step back, ask about how that person feels about putting the mic under their binder. Like, these are just sensitivities that, you're not going to necessarily think about if you haven't had the lived experience. But then even more so during like our lunch breaks and stuff. And again, this points directly back to Nava. There was a point where I was really encouraging everyone to be part of the interview process. And so, I was, are there questions you'd like to ask that I'm not asking? And there was a point where Nava did say, actually, yeah, I'm interested in XYZ. And that came up in the next interview, and that made it into the film. So these things really impact how the film is going to resonate and be more accessible. And so I can't overstate how important it is that the people who have the most at stake, the people who are the most invested, need to have a say in how the story is being told from top to bottom.
Thank you. Catherine and Shasha, how did you approach the making of Scarborough?
Catherine, do you want to share how we came together and decided to make the film?
I know, because it's still like sinking in. How did we do this? Yeah. So Shasha and I knew each other from the Filipinx community for many years and have worked together. The last time that we worked together was on a commission. And we knew that, from Toronto Toronto Real Asian Film Festival, and we knew that we already had like a shorthand with one another. So when my novel came out, Scarborough, it received great critical acclaim and was shortlisted for many awards. And I thought, well, because people were coming to me with requests to option the film, and the reels were so polished, but Scarborough, from what I understand, it's the same thing in the UK, that Scarborough in the UK is kind of the same kind of dodgy kind of neighborhood. I don't know. You can tell me if it's true. Scarborough is a dodgy place. It's not polished. And I thought, well, if people are going to be coming into my community, I don't want them to be invasive. And I couldn't stop thinking about these large production units in my neighborhood. And then also this appropriation of the way that we talk in this part of Toronto, and this, I guess, this weird like poverty porn that would come out of making a film about my neighborhood. I just was really nervous about it. And I thought, well, I would think that the best kind of filmmakers that I could partner with to make this adaptation would probably be documentary filmmakers. And because Shasha and Rich from Compy Films, because they're Oscar shortlisted documentary filmmakers, I thought, perfect, we already know each other, maybe this is a good match. And so I approached them. I said, is it possible if I was to adapt the book, do you think you can make it look like a documentary? Could you shoot it like a documentary and have sort of the same size of the crew that you would have in a documentary? Is that possible? And we had some discussions about whether or not it would be we could actually make this. It would be successful. And Shasha, I thankfully said yes. And I'll let Shasha talk about like what it was like to create it. Yeah.
Catherine really set the tone because, like, obviously she wrote this book from a place of love, and these characters were all like living, breathing in her mind. And she really set the tone with a very like generous, collaborative energy. And I think Rich and I my partner Rich, who worked with us, we really responded well to that. And we really took that same spirit to our collaborations with our team, but also the actors as well. And we really just tried to create an environment in which our huge ensemble cast of 60 speaking roles, majority first-time actors, we really just tried to create a space in which people would feel comfortable to be themselves, and we would work our way around that. And I will say, like, our process, we shot this film over a year, spread out over a year. And we didn't come in knowing exactly like, this is how we're going to do it. It's going to be wonderful. It was a lot of adjusting, a lot of trying to be sensitive to what people's needs are, and just like constantly adjusting as we went along. We didn't know exactly the process when we started. And I think that's really important to mention. We didn't know exactly how to do it properly in the beginning.
But you made it happen. Thank you. The next question is for all of you, but Nava, I think we can start with you if you're open to it. Can you talk a little bit about what being a part of this film meant to you, and how did the process impact you?
I mean, working on Disclosure for me really was a foundational benchmark in my filmmaking experience and education. Because I had never worked on a set of that magnitude. And I kind of came into the industry without having to go through the experience that I think a lot of trans people go through, or a lot of people of color go through, a lot of women go through, which is that you are the outlier, you are the outsider, you are the power minority on set for the vast majority of your experience. And then maybe you start to have experiences where that's not the case. And my experience has been the opposite, where in all my work starting out, it has been that I've been on sets where I do feel safe and I do feel empowered. And so I think that Disclosure for me really set the tone for what can be expected, because I think that can be difficult, is to imagine that a set like that can actually exist, and almost having to convince other people that it's possible. So it really is incomparable, the experience that I had on set.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. Theresa, how about you? How did being a part of this film impact you, and how did it affect the way you want to work moving forward?
I think really similar to Nava, really. This was my first experience, and it was predominantly female, predominantly Black and brown, and very much community and person-centered, which is like the ethos of my life before this coming into this weird and wonderful industry. So I just expected it. So I wasn't really impressed, to be honest, with the process. I was just like, as you should. And then everyone around me was like, oh my God, you're on set, you're giving notes, you've got a headset, you're stopping so the young people can do X, Y, and Z. You've thought about their religious needs and their community representation and what feels comfortable and right for them. And, oh, we're not going to write in a kiss because we don't want that for them to have their first kiss on camera. And all of these things that feel very reasonable and rational were made to be big deal. So I'm really glad that was my experience, because it's the lowest bar, I think, that we should strive to. And for me now, I don't think I can accept any lower. I only expect things to be better. And I think for the young people, what I hope, as they've now gone on to shoot things in different parts of the world with much bigger production companies, that we've embedded in them a level of power that they feel that they are entitled to, so they can go on sets and feel comfortable and feel able to expect and, if necessary, advocate for their safety and for their joy. Like, no one should come to work and be miserable. I think sometimes this whole struggling, sad, starving artist thing makes people feel valid in their work. But I think for me, it's very much about the work should feel joyful, no matter how. I think what Catherine was saying about poverty porn, of course, Rocks is set in an estate in Hackney and people expect it to look a certain way. But, you know, I really enjoyed sharing a bed with 4 people and sharing a bath with my sister. I didn't realize we were poor until I applied for uni. So, yeah, I just think the joy of representing cultures and communities is really foundational to my work. And I hope to continue to hopefully do that.
Amen to that. Thank you, Theresa. Shasha,
similarly, yeah. I mean, I had worked in documentary for 13 years, and I was lucky enough to mostly work on wonderful sets and to work on sets in which I picked every single crew member. And so when we made Scarborough, I didn't think it was really special in any way. But as I start to move more into like the fiction and TV world, I'm just realizing how special it was. And I now have made it like a real cornerstone of my practice to really try and build your own crews and work with people that you want to work with, because that's everything in this industry. Yeah, Catherine?
Yeah, I agree with Shasha. It's just, it for me, working on this film, for me, is what I feel that it's what every set should be like, is that there is, this is what happens when you give QT BIPOC people trust. Because following Scarborough, you know, there have been projects that have been part of where you're not, as like a brown femme, you're not being trusted with an idea. You're not being trusted to dream big. Because your dreams seem so outlandish, your dreams seem impossible. When in actual fact it's possible because we did it. We freaking did it because we could. And you know, like we had, similar to Theresa's, that we had mostly brown and black folks on set, a large number of them women, and it's amazing how it really let the muscles right around my traps and my scapula just relax when we would never take each other's presence for granted. I felt like I was constantly feeling either a great amount of trust for my team and a great amount of gratitude. And that was constantly cycled through the room. Everyone, I felt gratitude for everyone, from the people giving us food for the day all the way to the people who were brave enough to produce this project, right? Like, I just felt so thankful and just looking around saying, like, I completely trust each and every one of these cast members. They're going to do well, and I didn't have to worry about it. And also that they respect me and that they trust me. that feeling, you know, that of going on to another set and then feeling that all of a sudden you're being now helmed by white folks, people who don't share the same intersections of oppression that you do. All of a sudden, like, my body has to present in a very particular way. I have to sort of jut up my chin in order to get my message across. And I hate having to have that. I hate having to deal with that, to fight for a position, to fight for my perspective to be heard. It's very frustrating, but for me, it's worth it, because if I get to stand beside someone that I trust as much as I trust Shasha, I mean, it's worth it. It's completely worth it. That trouble is worth it. And it's worth it so that the next generation of people, of storytellers, that they don't have to fight as hard as me.
Thank you. Sam, over to you. And I can restate the question. How did being a part of the film impact you, and how does it affect the way you want to move forward in the future?
There, so early on when I started making work in the world, it was like very clear to me that the process has to be an end in and of itself, right? It can't be a means to an end. And so working on disclosure, just all the more so being surrounded by queer and trans people, like, just how meaningful that was. I can't even really explain it. There was a moment on one of our bigger shoots, I think it was August 2018, and I walked in when people had already been working for hours, and they were just setting up the stage, and I looked over and saw Jenny, who was one of the mentees, drawing diagrams, on the ground to teach the fellows and then other crew members how to light a certain situation. And just the pride, and pleasure I felt seeing that, and seeing that Jenny was so excited, right, to share and to teach, and to see how that just created that sense on set of how it's not just about paying it forward, it's paying it across, and just how meaningful it is to share those experiences. That just showed me there's no other way to do it, and to come into the industry at this point in my career, I'm so glad it didn't happen any sooner for me, because now I know what I will not do, I will not be tempted to do things in any other way besides what I know is the right way to do it. And that you have to, every step of the way, bring along the people you want to be with, not only the people that, it's right to open the door for, but these are the people I want to be with, who I want to work with, that I want to surround myself by. And there's no question that it can be done. So it changed me in the sense that it just solidified the way I've been hoping to work, for the past 17 years.
Thank you. It's very inspiring to hear all these stories. I think so much of the film industry tends to run on autopilot, especially when it comes to like casting, putting together a crew, the packaging process of putting a project together. We're told that it's impossible to do things any differently to how they've always been done, and you all triumphed. So I'm curious if you can share either side of the coin. How do you think your approach affected the resulting film and the experience of the people involved in the process? And also, like, what were the challenges of approaching the filmmaking process in this way?
I want to jump in here because I remember when the book received critical acclaim, and I thought, well, because I'm from the world of theater, maybe I can try my hand at adapting it. And that's like a very theater thing to say. It's like, I just want to try it. Let's just try it like an experiment. And I remember hearing from people in the industry saying, listen, you want to think of the adaptation, the film adaptation of your book as like your distant cousin. Like you don't want to really live in the same house as them. You just, if it gets made, it gets made, be happy, get the money for the optioning agreement. But otherwise, like, you don't want to be tied to it because it might be really bad. Like you might get an adaptation that's really bad. And I thought, what an attitude to have, is that you're like, oh, we're just going to take the money from this optioning agreement. And then I'm just going to run down and just like, like it's like the Music Man. It's like, telling everybody a lie about your book. I mean, like, I didn't want it to be like that. And I thought, well, why not? What's the harm in trying to adapt it? And I get it, that there are some authors who don't know how to write a script. And it's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. And that again is a very theater kind of way of thinking of things, is to fail brilliantly is a very, that's the mindset that you have in theater, right? And so for me, it was an experiment. Like, I really just wanted to just try. And even when Shasha and Rich said yes to the idea of us working together on this adaptation, and when they told me, oh, there's this funding deadline coming up and we're putting together all these materials, I thought, well, I'll just try to put together the script. And it took me about 2 weeks, and I had no idea how to write a script. I certainly, well, not a film script. I knew how to write a theater script. And when you format a theater script, almost like the way that you're formatting it is its own poetry. Like there's no format. It's just so that a director will get an idea as to how you've spaced it and how you've aligned it, as to like how to stage it, if that makes any sense. So like these hardcore rules about like, where the margins are and stuff like that. And I didn't understand any of it. So I just used Google Images, and then I just used Word. I had no idea what to do. And I sent that in with 2 weeks. And then I didn't know that it was, obviously there were going to be some adjustments, but it was pretty much ready to go into production. It was just because I had this constant feeling of like, let's just be curious. Let's just try it out. Like, why not? And I think that, when you talk about that, like Lucy, about like, there are these ways, like these autopilot ways that people operate. What I'm so glad for being new to this industry is that a lot of it, I'm just like, oh, how is this done? And also being queer, the folks that are on this panel that are from the queer community, queer means to me questioning how can we do things better. It doesn't necessarily mean like who you screw, what body parts you're attracted to. I think to me, queer means how do I think creatively so that I could live a better life? And as an artist, I think that that's definitely how I do things, is that I'm always like, what do I not like about films? Is like, oh, well, is how disingenuous they are. So then if I really want to go towards an art form that I feel is genuine, is to me is documentary filmmaker, because I love documentary films. And so I thought, well, how awesome is it to challenge myself as a writer if I can make a script that almost like, if the actor's doing it and it feels like a documentary, then that's great. That's the experiment. And little did I know that the experiment was going to be successful. Thank God it was. But it's also okay that the experiment goes badly. I think that to in answering to your question, that's how I feel about it all.
Theresa, I'm curious, because I know you had sort of a workshopping approach to writing the script for Rocks. Can you share a little bit about that process of playing with the actors and deciding who was going to embody these characters?
Yeah, definitely. So I had the outline or the beat sheet of the film already that I'd been working on for like a year before we started the Rocks process. So then bringing it, and funnily enough, I didn't know that I was going to bring it to Rocks. So Rocks team was formed before we had a film or really an idea. But it was the process of trying to find ideas and find stories with young people in London, and particularly young women in London, and then seeing this group of 7 emerge out of 1,300. That then it then felt like, oh, I had the seed over here, and this felt like we were, making really great soil. And rather than trying to find something else for it, it felt very naturally that actually what we had cultivated in these workshops and this environment was like a really safe and fertile ground for this seed that I'd been toiling away at over there. So it kind of came together naturally when I met Buki Bakray, who's the lead of Rocks. She's also you know, and maybe it's maybe very lazy imagination on my part, but she's from Hackney, which is where I'm from, East London. She's also Nigerian British like me. She is also the youngest in her household. It just felt very much like actually the story that I was trying to tell, which was initially a nod to my sister and a thank you to her. It felt very much like Bucky felt like my sister to me. So maybe a little bit of fate or maybe just a bit of laziness, but she also just had this really special thing where she seems very quite mature and quite grounded. And I think the way that we kind of do we do sort of adult Black and brown women, she does seem very much like a grown-up, and that is often a thing that Black and brown women have to deal with in school, even in the criminal justice system, where you are stripped of your innocence and your childhoodness. And she does have that thing where she does seem more responsible than her years and wiser than her years and more mature than her years. But then she cracks a smile, and then the mischief, and then you're like, oh, this is a child. And she plays in this way that it felt like I wanted to create an environment that allowed the rest of the world to see her as the child that she is, and maybe feel a call to rise up and protect and create safe places for young women who are often not allowed to be children.
Thank you. Yeah, you definitely succeeded in that. Even just describing the premise of the film to my friends, I well up in tears. So you definitely feel for her journey and her experience through watching the film. Shasha and Sam, I'm curious if you have anything to share about the benefits and the challenges of your filmmaking approach for these two films.
Yeah, I mean, I could sit here all day telling you about the ridiculous things we had to deal with. I mean, our film was a micro budget, so its budget, I guess this is for the Mill Valley Film Festival. So in US, it's about $250,000 US for a feature drama. So a lot of our challenges just stemmed from that, like having to wear too many hats, working with children, working with animals, the pandemic interrupting filming. I think one of the things that we learned along the way was that we were trying to do too much. Like we were a little micro budget, and I was directing, producing, production managing, first ADing, and, doing like childcare on set. And somehow I was also like, yeah, we're also going to do this mentorship, and we're going to do this mural that's in community partnership. And we also had 3 NGO partners come on board at the script stage to work with us, because we had one of our cast members, one of the characters is a child beginning to display early signs of ASD. And so we had these folks on set with us to make sure the mannerisms were correct and authentic. And we just were trying to do too many things. And then I realized, like, okay, this is a micro budget. We need to pick our, focus our attention a little bit more. And I think a lot of the challenges just stemmed from the fact that we didn't have too many resources, but everyone came through and poured so much love into the project. And that's how it was able to be done. Yeah.
Thank you. Sam?
There were challenges from the beginning to the end, no doubt. I mean, from getting funding to selling it, which everyone faces. But the things that really stood out to me that really made me angry were one where, people literally said to us when we explained that we were prioritizing hiring trans people, they were like, well, that's really sweet, but you want to hire the best people. And, trans people are the best people, and to have to even explain that was pretty demoralizing. And then likewise, trying to sell it, we literally heard from buyers, we bought a trans film 4 years ago. We don't want to oversaturate the market. This is like the bookend landscape that we were dealing with. And then, part of my ethic around documentary filmmaking is paying the people that are helping you make the film, not only behind the camera, but in front of the camera, especially when you're making a film about a marginalized community. And this is really looked down upon by many people in the industry. And so that was something that I had to explain over and over again. And again, that was just disheartening. Just that is not, it's not easily understandable why you should be paying people who are also working on the film, and they're sharing their lives with you, you know, and as a director, no matter what happens with the film, you have a finished project, and that gives you some cultural capital. Whereas the person who just gave you their very personal, valuable, vulnerable experiences, what are they going to walk away with? So you should in the least pay them for their time. So those are challenges that I just faced over and over again. I mean, those are challenges I faced my whole career, not just with this film.
And Nava, I'm curious if you can share what about the experience of this being a part of this film you treasure the most?
I think that, you know, as I was thinking about the previous question, I'm just remembering how it felt to be on that set. Everybody there, I felt like they really wanted to be there. And some of the things that the interview subjects had to talk about were very personal, very painful, very intimate and vulnerable. And yet there was this sacred feeling to the space. And I was not expecting myself to have such a intimate, personal experience just watching these interviews. And it just, I don't know how else to describe it, but it really almost felt spiritual. It's when I try to tap back into how it felt, that's it's a heart connection that I feel I have with a lot of people who worked on that set, with Sam, and with the interview subjects, even though they weren't speaking one-on-one to me. I really feel like everybody that worked on that set brought gifts, and so everybody left with just as many gifts. And that's not always how it works. That, you know, you mentioned that the industry often works on autopilot, and it just really was key that the space was not. Yes, it was a professional space. Yes, we were working hard, but it didn't feel like we were there just to get a paycheck. It felt like we were there to do something together.
That's amazing to hear. Thank you. I think that a lot of the folks listening, whether they're filmmakers themselves or looking to get into production work, they're going to be very keen to try to achieve the quality of filmmaking that you will have done with these 3 films. And I'm wondering what advice that you could give to people watching who are keen to follow your lead and approach their productions in an authentic, dignifying, respectful way, an empowering way.
I think that's why I really stressed at the beginning of the panel that, you know, we did what we did because we made a lot of mistakes along the way, and we were constantly open to adjusting ourselves. And I think just leading with that spirit is so important. You know, there's no blueprint for you to follow. Each production is very different and has its own very different needs, and each actor and each crew member has their own very different needs. So just being open to adjusting yourself constantly, I think, is a really great attitude to have no matter what you're doing. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else wants to dive in and share how other people could learn from your approaches?
And I think there's just something really simple, is just to be kind. And I don't know what to say if you're not naturally a kind person, how to learn kindness, but be kind, and surround yourself with kind people. I think to what Sam said, when people say, we have to get the best people, but I think you have to redefine what best is. Is best the person who has the CVs and the awards, or is best the person who's going to bring out the best version of the experience? Because I do think you do see on screen when people love and fall in love with the work. So you have to be really sure what best means to you, and somehow, hopefully, your definition of best includes kindness and compassion and joy the things that happen behind the scenes of the film should be better than the thing that happens on the screen, in my opinion. So yeah, be kind and work with kind people.
Very well said. Thank you. Anyone else want to chime in here?
I always think about some of the logistical pieces of what made the set of disclosure work so well. And I think that there was moments where, yes, we had to hustle, but I think that the way that time was built for the production was also different than other productions. We had time for morning check-ins. We had time for an actual lunch break, and then another check-in after lunch. We had time for reflection sessions with Sam and the fellows. We had time for the fellows to teach for the mentors to teach the fellows how to tie the knots. And and it never felt like we were creating any problem by asking a question. Because I think it just shifted people's mentality in how we were receiving each other. And so that, I don't know if Sam can speak to that, but I wonder if that was just kind of an intuitive decision, but it's something that feels noteworthy, and I think relates to budget, right? Because you do have to think about, well, maybe we need a budget for another day, or maybe we need a budget for another person, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the environment of the set experience, and obviously filmmakers are world builders, but your first world that you're building is your crew and that on-set experience. So is there anything else there that might be helpful to share with folks watching, of how you structured your days to bring the best out in your teams?
I mean, I feel like we've all touched on this, and I, just kind of so much of what feminism has taught me, and care and what we were talking about with kindness, like these, it can't be overlooked, but those are so antithetical towards capitalism, right? So it's so scary to question capitalism. But once you do, so much opens up, and the world does start to change. And so I think it's so easy to make excuses when things seem hard. But I really do encourage people to see what happens when you try what seems might be the harder thing, and to see what unfolds from that. And I mean, it was intuitive in the sense that Nava was saying, the making time, because that's what I wanted to do, right? That was the world I want to live in. And so when you start building the world you want to live in, it's amazing what will unfold.
Thank you. I think we're coming to the end of our time together, but this is sort of the moment where, if any of you have parting words to share or anything else about the experience of these films that you'd like to impart to folks at home, please chime in, and then we'll close from there. I think it's been really special to have all of you together, because you have created very different films, but they unite in these common themes. And
it's so great to be on a panel with like-minded people, like with these topics that we're talking about. Usually I'm the only voice on the panel, to chime in and talk about these possibilities. So thank you, Lucy, for bringing us together. I just love what everyone had to say. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, I really just wanted to say I'm so honored to even be on this panel with you all. I really admire and respect both filmmaking teams. So it's really an honor to be here with you all. So thank you.
Yeah, same here. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you. It's so wonderful to meet you all.
Same. I'm really looking forward to watching your films, and enjoy Scarborough. Enjoy the ride.
Yeah, same for me. Thank you so much for the invitation, and thank you everybody for sharing everything. It's just, yeah, it really feeds the heart to have these kinds of spaces. So thank you. And I can't wait to see Scarborough and Rocks too. So is Scarborough screening at the Mill Valley Film Festival or?
No, but it should, making its way on the festival circuit soon. So you'll be hearing about it.
Okay, I'll keep an eye out.
You've all been so generous in sharing the richness of your collaborations. Thank you. And I'm looking forward to being able to sort of be the bridge that connects the viewers with your films, and they'll all discover your websites and social media presence and follow you there.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you all.
Bye.